Would you dare to enter a mysterious cave knowing you might never return? 4 friends did just that when they explored Devil's Hole, a geothermal abyss hiding dark secrets. What began as a thrilling dive turned into a desperate struggle for survival when 2 vanished without a trace. As panic set in, they realized that their adventure had spiraled into a nightmare. What happened in those dark depths? Where did the 2 young men disappear in the depths of Devil's Hole? Let's uncover the mystery of the Devil's Hole tragedy. Now, before we dive into this haunting tale, please be aware that the content may be distressing for some viewers. David Rose, Paul Giancontieri, and the Alter brothers, Bill and Jack, were a close group of high school friends. All in their late teens, they were excited about life and looking for adventure beyond their everyday routines. David, a 20-year-old parking attendant, often dreamt of adventure while managing the chaotic flow of luxury cars. His heart raced at the thought of exploring hidden caves, yearning for excitement beyond the Mirage Casino. Paul, at 19, had taken a job in the cafeteria at the nearby Nevada nuclear test site. Now, while his friends joked about his ordinary work, Paul had always been fascinated by the stories hidden in the caves and canyons surrounding the site. He wanted to dive into the secrets of the past, to uncover the mysteries lurking just beneath the surface. The Alter brothers, Bill and Jack, aged 19 and 20, were inseparable adventurers, always seeking the next thrill. They loved to explore abandoned buildings. Their energy and excitement were contagious in their visit to Devil's Hole. The United States has thousands of caves, each with its own unique features. From Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, the longest cave in the world, to Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico, these natural wonders attract many visitors. Among these geological marvels, Death Valley National Park is famous not just for its stunning views, but also for special places like Devil's Hole. Death Valley is one of the most famous national parks in the U.S. Located in eastern California and stretching into Nevada, it is known for being the hottest, driest, and lowest park in the country. The lowest point, Badwater Basin, is 282 feet below sea level. The park features salt flats, sand dunes, and rugged mountains, creating a striking landscape. The name Death Valley comes from a group of pioneers who got lost there in the winter of 1849-1850. Although they survived, the name stuck, giving the valley a reputation for danger and desolation. Today, people from all over the world visit Death Valley to explore its unique scenery and learn about its natural wonders. Within Death Valley lies Devil's Hole, an important geological feature in Ash Meadows National Wildlife Refuge. Devil's Hole is often called the most mysterious place on Earth. It's a deep pit in Nevada that nobody has been able to measure properly. Some believe that it might even be deeper than the famous Kola Super Deep Borehole, which goes down 12,262 meters, or 7.6 miles. But having explored the rich history and allure of Death Valley and its hidden gems, the friends felt compelled to experience the enigmatic depths of Devil's Hole firsthand. Their excitement would soon lead them to an unforgettable night. On the evening of June 20th, 1965, this group of friends arrived at the famous Devil's Hole. They lacked important safety items like dive knives and signal devices for emergencies. Expert divers would have prepared a detailed dive plan with maps and a proper first aid kit to handle any emergencies. Unfortunately, the friends only had their basic gear, which left them unready for the tough environment they were about to enter. To explore the depths of Devil's Hole safely, they needed much more than just masks and fins. They were missing essential equipment like dive knives for cutting lines, underwater lights for better visibility, and signal devices to communicate in emergencies. These tools are crucial for staying safe and making quick decisions underwater. For example, if a diver got tangled in weeds, having a dive knife could help them escape. Without this important gear, the friends were putting themselves in a risky situation that could lead to serious trouble. The 3 friends decided that Paul, David, and Bill would dive into the depths of Devil's Hole. Among them, the youngest boy, named Jack, would stay outside. He felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as he prepared to wait on the shore. Jack planned to stay close to their gear, keeping an eye on their things and making sure that everything was in order. He thought it wouldn't take too long for his friends to explore, so he felt confident in his role. He would be ready to call for help if anything went wrong during their underwater adventure. Knowing he was there to watch over them made him feel important, even though he wished he could join them in the water. Jack understood that he needed to stay alert and be ready to react quickly if an emergency came up. Paul, David, and Bill started getting ready for the dive. They put on their masks and fins, adjusted their snorkels, and checked each other's gear to make sure everything was set. Little did they know what was about to happen. The structure of the Devil's Hole is not some ordinary cavern. It features a unique and complex underwater architecture that poses significant challenges to divers. The entrance features a deceptively calm, water-filled vertical shaft that plunges sharply into a vast, echoing chamber below. The entrance itself is deceptively serene, measuring just 8 feet wide and 60 feet long. However, nobody knows how much deeper and more dangerous the territory below is. Around 90 feet down, the path narrows into a tight passage that opens up into a huge space called Acre Chasm. This chasm is very wide, and divers often say that all they see is an endless amount of water beneath. Some of the divers believe that Devil's Hole reaches depths of at least 932 feet, or even more. As Paul, David, and Bill began their dive into the Devil's Hole, their excitement increased. They passed through the difficult, narrowed path to the main chamber and reached the middle, a huge space that felt thrilling and a little scary. After a few minutes, Bill began to worry as his oxygen was running low faster than he expected. A feeling of panic grew in his stomach as he signaled to Paul and David to come back up. They all felt they might run out of oxygen, making their situation serious. Waiting outside the cave, Jack also started to feel nervous, watching the minutes go by. The silence felt endless, and he grew uneasy. After a frantic struggle, Bill and David finally surfaced, gasping for air. Panic gripped them as they realized Paul was missing. Jack watched them remove their oxygen masks, his heart sinking. They looked around, scanning the water and the rocky shore, but Paul was nowhere to be found. They quickly decided to go back down into the cave without waiting any longer. This second dive was colder, making it difficult for them to pass through the cave entrance. When they reached the center of the chamber, David and Bill began to look around, but there was still no sign of Paul. Feeling increasingly anxious, David decided to swim even deeper, moving quickly into the darkness. After a few moments, Bill lost sight of him completely. The only source of light was Bill's flashlight, but as he searched frantically, the beam slowly started to fade, leaving him in growing darkness. He kept calling out for both David and Paul, hoping for a response. As the water around him became even darker, he realized he needed to come up with a plan. Feeling a mix of fear and determination, he decided it was time to go back up to the surface and inform Jack, hoping to figure out what to do next. After waiting some time outside of the cave, Jack and Bill hurried to ask the local authorities in Death Valley for urgent help to find David and Paul. The officials knew how dangerous it was to dive in the dark cave. A search team of 5 divers, led by Houts, worked tirelessly under the scorching 105-degree heat throughout the day. Despite their determination, the conditions were harsh, making it difficult to search the dark depths of the cave. Each member of the team took turns diving, hoping to find any sign of David and Paul, but time passed without success. As they assessed the situation, they realized that they needed an expert diver, someone who was familiar with the tricky conditions, especially someone who had experience diving in Devil's Hole. The authorities quickly contacted Jim Houts, who had extensive experience diving in Devil's Hole and knew the complexities of the cave system well. Understanding the risks and challenges, he was ready to help. Jim had also inspired these friends to explore the cave in the first place. His thrilling stories of underwater adventures and discoveries had sparked their curiosity and excitement. Now, as they faced the consequences of their decision, Jim's knowledge and skills were crucial in navigating the dangerous situation. Jim was fully prepared with his diving partner, and before they entered the water, they gathered to map out the cave system. Having dived in Devil's Hole many times, Jim knew all the areas well, including a section known as Brown's Room, which contained air pockets. He explained that if Paul and David David were running low on oxygen, they might have tried to reach this spot for safety. With this plan in mind, they suited up and made their way into the water, determined to search every possible location. Jim's familiarity with the cave gave them hope that they would find Paul and David, as he was ready to navigate the twists and turns of the underwater passages to bring them back to safety. Jim and his partner went down into the cave. As they crossed the entrance through the main chamber, they reached the space where upwards was the way to Brown's room. Now, the entrance to be able to reach Brown's room was quite small, and they had to hug the walls to be able to reach out. And as soon as they did, they found out that there was nobody, and they were both shocked that if both divers weren't there, that meant that they had died by now because they didn't have enough oxygen to stay down for that long. Typically, a standard scuba tank holds enough air for 30 to 60 minutes of diving, but factors like depth and exertion can significantly reduce this time, especially in high-stress situations. If a diver is too deep or panics, they can use up their air much faster. Jim imagined the moment when Paul and David first noticed their tanks getting low. Feeling panic set in as they tried to find their way back. As they swam to the Browns' room, their hearts would have raced, and their breathing would have quickened, which would eventually use up even more oxygen. If they had struggled to reach a safe spot, they might have used their air reserves up too quickly. Jim and his dive partner came out of Brown's room and started going deeper into the cave to the area known as the lower ledge. Now, this area is not ideal to look into if you're looking for divers who might be alive, but due to the heavy chances that they had already been out of oxygen, Jim started logging down to at least find something that could give them proof. As they descended, the rocky path became increasingly treacherous. It was filled with rocks and unstructured pathways. But there, Jim saw something that opened his eyes in shock. Jim spotted a dive mask and a single fin lying on the ground, half buried in the mud. His heart raced as he exchanged a worried glance with his partner. They knew that these items could be important clues about what had happened to Paul and David. Without wasting any time, they quickly began searching the area, looking for anything else that might help them understand the situation. The water felt colder as they moved, and shadows swirled around them, adding to their anxiety. They carefully checked every corner, hoping to find more signs of their friends. But after a thorough search, they realized that they needed to head back to the surface to see if the dive mask and fin really belonged to David and Paul. As they were going up to the surface, Jim's mind raced with questions. Where were Paul and David? He kept thinking, is there something wrong that we're missing? He felt a growing sense of dread, wondering if they were overlooking something important. When Jack and Bill saw the dive gear, they immediately recognized it as belonging to their friends, David and Paul. The realization hit them hard, confirming their worst fears about what might have happened in the cave. The authorities requested Jim and his partner to return to the cave and search for David and Paul's bodies. As the only experienced divers available, they felt a heavy responsibility to find their friends and bring closure to the situation. Jim and his partner returned to the cave, following the same path as before. When they reached the lower ledge, they felt a strong need to go deeper. This time, they were determined to find the bodies or any signs of the young boys. The darkness surrounded them, but they kept moving, their lights cutting through the murky water. After looking around, they found nothing. No sign of anybody or remains like before. They felt that they were missing something because usually when somebody runs out of oxygen and drowns in a cave, their body tends to rise to the surface due to buoyancy. This happens because as the body begins to decompose, gases accumulate in the intestines, causing it to float. Typically, after drowning, the body should be found near the surface, especially in a contained environment like a cave where water currents are minimal. In such conditions, the stillness of the water makes it more likely for a body to remain close to the top, making recovery easier. This knowledge added to Jim's growing concerns as he searched for any signs of Paul or David. All of a sudden, Jim's eye caught a small tunnel-like hole that was pulling the surrounding water towards it. It was something that he had never seen before. He tried to cross the entrance to the tunnel, using a weighted line to measure the depth in the water or to determine the vertical drop of the tunnel. It helps divers and explorers gauge how deep a body of water is or how far down a tunnel goes. He released the weighted line into the hole and he watched as it sank easily past the 932-foot mark, disappearing into the darkness without hitting anything. This depth was shocking. It showed that the tunnel went much deeper than what most divers could handle. Most divers were only trained to go down to about 130 to 200 feet, making the idea of going further very dangerous. The deepness filled them with dread. highlighting the risks they faced. With each foot that the line sank, it became clear that this was a place that they might never escape from. He told his partner that we're not going down there, and they both came back to the surface. When they emerged, Paul and David's friends were waiting anxiously for news. Sadly, it was confirmed that both boys were presumed dead, but their bodies had not been found. To this day, David and Paul remain missing, and their families are left with unanswered questions. The tragedy not only sealed the fate of 2 young lives, but also led to stricter regulations at Devil's Hole, forever changing how the site is approached. The mountains of North Georgia are one of the most beloved and recognizable landscapes in the American South. Less known, however, is another natural phenomena that also appears here: caves. There are over 500 caves in Georgia, many of which can be found and explored in its northern mountainous region. The deepest and most intimidating of them all, however, is Ellison's Cave. As we're about to see, entering this cave is uniquely dangerous. And in the tragic case of 2 students from the University of Florida, it can even bring our worst nightmares to reality. Ellison's Cave is located on Pigeon Mountain, a remote summit about an hour's drive south of Chattanooga, Tennessee. The cave is definitely not a roadside attraction. To reach it, you have to drive way out into seriously rural territory, with only a few dirt roads and nothing to see but Georgia pines and thick shrubbery all around. Then, you have a considerable distance to travel on foot before you reach the mouth of the cave, more than 2,600 feet above sea level. There is one major reason why this cave is different from the rest of its neighbors. That reason is Fantastic. Fantastic is the name of the deepest cave drop in the continental US, and it is inside Ellison's Cave. This vertical tunnel descends straight down for so long that if the Space Needle from Seattle were placed at the bottom, only a few feet of antenna would stick out from the top. There are few caves in the world where you'll find a longer distance between you and the ground below you. An average adult who fell from the top of the pit could theoretically open a YouTube video and skip all the ads before hitting the bottom. It is a place that only the most experienced explorers are advised to go to, but sadly, that isn't always who finds their way out here. On Friday, February 11th, 2011, 18-year-old Michael Wayne Peary and 20-year-old Grant Lockenbach were on Pigeon Mountain. They were both students from the University of Florida in Gainesville, and they were there with 8 other people, all of whom wanted to explore Ellison's Cave. Walker County Sheriff Steve Wilson would later report that, in his opinion, the group had, quote, limited novice experience in caving. It's not uncommon for the North Georgia mountains to be sprinkled in snow during the winter months, and that day in February would have been quite cold. To reach the mouth of the cave, the group also had to ascend to a higher elevation, and pit caves tend to be even colder near their entrances during winter months, so it's likely that anyone in this group would have either been heavily bundled up or shivering upon reaching the mouth of Ellison's Cave. What happened next has never been fully explained. All we know is that a backpack, which belonged to someone in the group, fell into the cave. We don't know what was in the backpack, and we don't know for sure who it belonged to, but it seems likely it may have belonged to Grant Lockenbach because he chose to go in after it. Despite multiple warning signs posted outside the cave, and despite the fact that the backpack could have easily fallen hundreds of feet below, Lockenbach strapped himself in and began rappelling down, initiating a slow, untrained descent into one of the deepest cave drops on the planet. Rappelling down such a seemingly endless shaft with limited experience and no research ahead of time is something no experienced explorer would ever recommend. But Lockenbach showed some impressive determination in attempting to retrieve the fallen backpack because he eventually made it almost 150 feet down into the cave. It was at this dramatic point that disaster struck. Lockenbach suddenly became entangled in the rope. He also found himself stuck in the path of a waterfall, relentlessly dousing him in freezing cold water. Lockenbach immediately began hollering up to his friends, crying out for help. It was at this time that Michael Wayne Peary also strapped himself in and began descending to try and help Lockenbach. It's not clear whether Peary ever reached Lockenbach. All we know is that at some point during the descent, he too became stranded. Both Peary and Lockenbach were suspended in peril, unable to help each other and unable to ascend or descend. Meanwhile, the other 8 members of the group remained at the mouth of the cave. It may have been that Peary and Lockenbach were using all of the available equipment, or it may have been that the group decided it wasn't worth risking a third person getting stranded in the cave. Either way, the remaining 8 reportedly continued yelling down to Peary and Lockenbach, desperately trying to figure out how to get them out for about 20 to 30 minutes. Then, something truly haunting began to happen. According to Sheriff Wilson, who spoke with the group of 8 immediately after the incident, the voices of Peary and Lockenbach began, quote, fading off. There are a couple of disturbing explanations for this cryptic phase. One is that Peary and Lockenbach somehow got untangled and began descending even further into the cave. Far more likely, however, is that the two young men began experiencing symptoms of acute hypothermia. After losing contact with their friends, the panicked group ran to get help. Local authorities, including Walker County's Cave and Cliff rescue team, soon arrived on the scene. Even with a team of trained professionals working tirelessly, it took an astonishing 8 hours to retrieve the two young men. Sadly, and horrifically, both died while suspended in the cave. A man representing Walker County Emergency Management, who was present at the scene, told reporters the following, quote, "With the apparel that they were apparently wearing, which was not conducive for this weather and the ice-cold water, within a very short period of time, it appears they were overcome by hypothermia. The apparel in question turned out to be shorts and t-shirts, which could have easily been less than ideal for cave exploration in warm weather, let alone near freezing temperatures." The man from Walker County Emergency Management also explained that the cave's extreme depth not only makes it dangerous, but one of the most technically challenging caves in the U.S. as well. Following this tragic incident, Sheriff Wilson warned the public that Ellison's cave is, quote, "a treacherous, dangerous cave." There is one other reported instance of a caver getting stranded in Ellison's cave, then dying of hypothermia. It happened back in 1999. There have also been a couple of other serious injuries in the years since. However, the tragic deaths of Michael Wayne Peary and Grant Lockenbach stand out as the most shocking and tragic event to befall this unique cave. Michael played drums in the Gator Marching Band and was studying marketing. Grant was studying sociology, and at 20 years old, he was close to graduation. The University of Florida held a candlelight vigil on campus following their deaths. This story is a heartbreaking reminder of how dangerous caving can be, particularly if you're not well equipped and lack the requisite experience.